So I guess you could say that I love objects, and all kinds of objects. I'm a collector of things, and the things I love most are records. I'm a DJ, and I love the feel of going through old bins of records for hours and hours, getting my hands filthy and dirty and sneezing and just looking for that perfect record. And but anyways, this love of objects, I think I got this from my grandfather, who was the ultimate pack rat. And you would go in his basement and you would see like rows and rows of jars of organized screws from 1947 that hadn't been used since, but everything was neat and orderly and, organized. And that's how I am with the things that I collect. And I'm also sentimental, and I love mementos, other objects. And the things that I love the most are probably from my grandfather, because he was my father figure, essentially. And this sweater right here is from 1952, and it was his. And I inherited his car, which had like random pieces of tape on it that I thought were like covering up dents and things, but realizing like 5 years after I owned the car that they were actually just covering up like buttons that he never wanted valets to touch. But I've left them on because it was his car. So the ultimate object, I think, was that I've ever seen was involving my grandfather. My grandfather passed away about 3.5 years ago, and I had spent the last 2 years of his life being his caretaker and my grandmother's caretaker, and I had found out in that time, I would drive them everywhere because they couldn't drive anymore, and I would drive them and I would listen to their stories and hear about things. And so I found out my grandfather was in World War II, as a lot of men his age were, and he, at the time, there was a thing that was called a private press record. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a record that you used to be able to go into a shop, and for $5 or $2 or whatever it was, you could record a record of your voice. And so my grandfather proposed to my grandmother from Germany on a private press record, and he sent it back to her, and they kept it. She kept it, and I found this out, and I was like, where is it? I need to hear it. Like this is like the ultimate crate dig, which is a DJ term. It's like the ultimate gold mine for like a record collect. Like what could be more perfect than like my hero proposal to my grandmother. And I listened to it, and it's on a 45 record, and it's him saying, Edith, I love you. Will you marry me when I get home from this godforsaken place? And I was like in tears when I heard it. And it stayed in one drawer in my grandparents' house. And so when my grandfather died, my grandmother decided to move from Newton to Chicago, and we started packing up everything. And I realized I need to find the record, and I went to the drawer, and it was gone. And I asked everyone in the family that had been helping packing, I said, where did this go? And they said, I don't know. It should be in there. No one remembered moving it, but the memory of my family is like a fucking goldfish, you know. My grandfather was the only one who could remember things. So I'm like scouring the house. I'm ripping open boxes that like have already been packed, looking for this record. I couldn't find it anywhere. I fly to Chicago, like with my grandmother, and then because I need to find like this record with when all her shit got there, and I'm like opening it in her new apartment in Chicago, in my aunt's house in her basement, going through everything, looking at like pictures, and like I don't even give a shit like what the fuck is on it. There's like wedding pictures from like 1947, and I'm like fuck this, and you know like just you know. Tearing every piece of furniture and box apart, and I couldn't find it, and I have yet to find it, and you know it's really sad, you know. But I guess you know I told my grandmother this, and she told me that you know she said you know Dan, I know this is really what you want, but you know you remember your grandfather, and you know, and that's the most important thing, right? And I said, you're right, you know, it is the most important thing.